Over the last 10 years, I've met 34 billionaires. And these aren't casual encounters at networking events. These are friends I travel the world with. I go to their weddings. Heck, one of them, Dave Gerard, even ended up buying my company. As I've gotten to know them and hang out with them, I've really tried to understand, what makes them different? What do billionaires know that you and I don't? What habits and unique traits do billionaires have that you can steal and apply to your own life? Well, here's everything I've learned. See, the first thing you need to understand about billionaires is how they think about risk. There's all these conceptions about, billionaires take these massive risks, or maybe you think billionaires are super risk adverse and they never take risks. But the answer actually lies somewhere in between. A good example of this is a guy that I was at dinner with a couple years ago. His name's Eric. He's the founder of Ramp. They're worth about $8 billion, so he's doing okay for himself. And I was talking to him about, how he came up with the idea for Ramp, what made him want to do sort of the next thing. He had already sold a company once to Capital One. Why go for this next venture? And we had this discussion about how essentially when you sell your first company or you have your sort of first win, in many ways it alleviates the pressure of needing to win, which allows you to take these bigger swings with a lower probability but a higher expected value outcome. In simple terms, all that means is that you stack your wins and start playing for bigger wins as you collect smaller wins. And the best people that I've met at this are constantly aware of when is momentum on their side. When they get a big win by selling a company, they are using that momentum to start the next venture and to raise more money or to get more press. And as these sort of wins stack on each other, there's this constant velocity that builds up where the momentum just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And it's, maybe one of the reasons why people say the rich get richer. It's because they're using momentum so much in their favor that they're stacking these wins and they can take swings and at-bats that you and I, the average person, could never dream of because they have so much momentum already on their side. But to make sure that you actually choose the right levers as you're playing a momentum game, you also need to get really good at making decisions. And this is another place where billionaires really excel. You see, if you think about it, life today in our modern society is basically all decision making. All success or failure comes from decision. And you probably have some sort of decision-making framework. Maybe you make a pro or con list. Maybe you sort of go with your gut. Whatever it is, the big difference I've seen with the way that billionaires make decisions and the average person makes decisions, it's not always that they make better decisions. It's more the way they think about it. So most people make a decision because they want to choose the right path. But in the real world, when the stakes are very high, oftentimes you don't have enough data to make a good decision, at least not a perfect decision. And so first is getting really comfortable making decisions with limited data. That's sort of its own skill set, and that's probably one of the biggest traits I've seen in leadership in general. But on top of that, billionaires do something really interesting when they make decisions. The first is they cut off possibilities. If you look at the Latin root of decision to cut off. So when you make a decision, you cut off other options. This is really famous from Jeff Bezos and his Amazon framework, disagree and commit, where maybe not everyone thinks this is the best decision or the right decision, but billionaires understand that you need to make a decision and propel yourself forward. The reason for that is the decision is not just to set a course or to move the company in a certain direction. Oftentimes, because of the limited data that you're making decisions are a data collection framework. By making a decision, committing to it for a certain amount of time with that decision process, what you're doing is you're actually collecting more data on this decision that was very limited data to understand if it was the right decision or if other paths are better. And this is something that really, separates the greats from just the average, because by looking at decisions as a way to collect data, not only do you make better decisions, but you make decisions more often. And sometimes just being capable of making a decision and choosing a path forward is actually what makes you successful. A lot of people I see just fail because they're in this decision paralysis. Should I start this business or not? What's the best business model? How much should I charge? How do I get my first customers? And they're setting all of these parameters for themselves, and they're so stuck in the thinking process, they never actually make decisions, when in reality, if they just made a decision, stuck with it for 3 months, 6 months, you would get so much data from that period that you would then be able to make better decisions and know if your decision was the right one. And so getting good at decision making is such an important part of success. And to make your decisions even more powerful, there's another sort of small tweak that I've seen enough billionaires do to where I started to recognize, hey, this is not something common. This is actually sort of a unique trait that these billionaires possess. I first started to recognize this when I was actually hanging out with a billionaire friend of mine, having a delicious $12 cappuccino, sorry, Graham, at the Terrace Cafe in New York at the Edition Hotel. It's a fantastic place to grab coffee, by the way. We were talking about books that had really changed our lives, and I recommended this specific book, but I was explaining at the time how it had really been impactful to me. And once he decided, I want to actually do this, from decision to action was extremely short. In that case, almost immediate. He decided he wanted to read the book. He bought the book on the spot. Now, there's another really interesting and counterintuitive way that billionaires think that I really didn't encounter firsthand until after I'd sold my company and was working under Dave G, the founder, and we'd meet every 2 weeks. And so I got to see really how he handles things. The thing that stuck out to me, he was a master of understanding the big picture. Why are we here? Start with why, all of that. What's the big vision? And, that I think is more common amongst the CEOs that I know. Everyone is good at vision setting, but what really separated Dave, and now I've seen this pattern sort of play out with other billionaires, is it's not just the big picture. It's not just the why are we here. It's the attention to detail, that the ability to go from the macro to the micro details is incredible. A good example is after we got acquired, we had to launch a new website because we had the old website and now we were folded under the Upstart brand. So we're launching this new campaign, new webpage, everything. The day that we're supposed to launch, we've got all this slick copy, all these graphics and everything else. I get a message from Dave. I'm assuming it's going to be like, congrats. This is amazing. So welcome to the family, all that. And he's like, hey, the webpage is down. There's a technical error. And I was at the time, actually pretty embarrassed. Still kind of embarrassing to say it, but somehow, this page had launched with a technical error and IT people didn't catch it. My VP of marketing didn't catch it. I didn't catch it. All these sort of levels of people completely missed this technical error. But Dave G, the CEO, who has 2,000 plus people rolling into him and is managing investor relations and everything else, catches the technical error. And I would sort of write this off as a one-off thing if it didn't happen all the freaking time. Working under Dave, I would constantly be impressed at how he would catch small little errors. And it was well known in the company that he would often find reports that were a little off or just data that was a little mismatched or whatever. He was really good at picking out these small details. And it was just something about the way his brain worked. And this is, again, not just Dave G, but I've seen this over and over and over. Elon Musk is another great example. When he was building SpaceX, he didn't just go and hire the world's smartest people to build spaceships. He himself became obsessed with actual rocket science. He understands the propulsion. He understands how these jets take off, and he's actually giving feedback to the scientists and engineers and helping them tweak the actual boosters on these rockets. Now, if that sounds complicated, well, it is, but billionaires also have a pretty unique lifestyle that allows them to achieve this more often than regular folks. But before I get to that, if you're liking this video, would you consider actually giving it a like or subscribing to the channel? It really helps us sort of reach more people. We make these videos for free, and thanks for watching. So the lifestyle that billionaires lead is something that I think is really lost in today's social media world. If you look online today, you might think that billionaires are, sailing around on their yachts and flying their private jets, racing supercars, having 11 children with 3 mothers. Or maybe that's just Elon Musk. But the truth is, these sort of activities and lifestyles are not for billionaires when they're getting wealthy. These are for billionaires who have already made their money, oftentimes moved on from the sort of career stage of their life. They're in more of a leisure stage of life where they're actually spending their money and enjoying it. They really live sort of simple, routine lives so that they can reduce the amount of inputs and outputs in their lives and actually just focus on the things that matter. If you look at someone like Jeff Bezos, when he was worth $8 billion, he was still driving a beat-up Honda Accord. Travis Kalanick, founder of Uber, again, worth billions at the height of Uber. What is he driving? A beat-up old BMW with a broken alternator. And it's not just about them sort of being lazy or monk-like. They're also usually actively simplifying life. Maybe they buy homes in cash, and sure, that's a big privilege, but if you listen to them talk, sometimes they say it's just because they don't want to forget a mortgage payment or something. All these little decisions that you have to make day to day, they try to eliminate so they can really focus on the big picture. And focusing on the big picture and really understanding how billionaires sort of hone their focus is something I didn't really understand until I learned this framework from Reid Hoffman, the billionaire founder of LinkedIn. He gives this analogy of spinning plates. Imagine there's a bunch of sort of sticks with plates spinning on top. Your job is to keep the plate spinning. And the way that you would have to do that is, you spin this plate really quick and then run over to this plate really quick. And then you go to this plate and you sort of have to run around and keep spinning the plates that are maybe starting to wobble a little bit or look like they're going to fall. If you think about a billionaire, in this metaphor that I'm extending, imagine how you think a billionaire might play this game of spinning plates. Do you think they maybe develop the best algorithm so that they're always one step away from the plate that's starting to wobble so that they're the most efficient? Or maybe they're like hyper efficient with their arms, and so they can spin the plates super fast, or they can spin 2 plates at once. That might be the way that you think, but it's actually far different. Billionaires in this game of spinning plates, what they do is they identify maybe the 1 to 3 plates that have to keep spinning, and they just sit there and stare at the 3 plates and spin them 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and let all the other plates fall to the ground. This is a very painful and uncomfortable thing. What it often means is, not replying to text messages, ignoring phone calls, missing birthdays. Social life maybe is a mess, but what they're doing is they're focusing on the most important plates in their lives. And it's an uncomfortable feeling to let all the other plates shatter around, but it's something that you have to get used to if you want to actually achieve significantly outsized success in a specific area in your life. Now, there's another weird thing that I've seen billionaires do that seems to come very natural to them, but if I'm going to be totally honest and transparent, it still is very hard for me to do, and it's something that I'm probably just okay at, if I'm being honest. I don't know if it's because I grew up with nothing, we grew up poor, didn't have anything. I'm used to holding myself to really high standards. I'm really okay beating myself up if I don't do things, and I often do that a lot, but also just setting a really high bar for myself. But when it comes to holding a really high bar for other people, maybe punishing them if they don't meet that, it feels very uncomfortable for me to really hold people to an extremely high standard. I often find myself rationalizing, maybe they have stuff going on at home, I know they're trying their best, things like that. Whereas the billionaires that I've met, they almost have this natural ability to basically, in a management environment, understand hey, the opportunity that we have here is rare, it's unique, and you need to earn the right to be here. And if you're not performing at the highest level, you're out, and we're going to find someone else to come in. Billionaires are very good at holding people to high standards in ways that, like I said, still doesn't come natural to me. Maybe it's why I'm not a billionaire, but it's this uncanny ability to set a standard and demand people achieve that standard and hold them accountable to it. And I think part of the reason for this is also the mindset that billionaires have when it comes to long-term thinking and patience. Social media has convinced you that you need to be trying to find the fastest way to get to $10,000 a month, or do this in 60 days to get your first $100,000. I've never met a billionaire that actually thinks this way. In fact, I would argue if you are trying to get to $10,000 a month in the fastest way possible, that is likely to also be the slowest way for you to make $1 million, $5 million, etc. Because what happens is when you build rapidly to try to get to a certain numerical goal, you take shortcuts. You don't build a strong foundation. You don't have a long-term mindset. Whereas the billionaires that I've met, they tend to not think in months or even quarters. They intuitively think when it comes to goals and goal achievement in 5-year, 10-year plans. And by measuring success in 5, 10-year chunks, what happens is they don't get caught up in the noise. When you often set out to do something, there's this volatility, sort of things go well, things go poorly, things go well, things go poorly. And these ups and downs can feel very painful. But if you were to actually zoom out 5 years, all this little volatility up and down along the way starts to look more like a trend line where you're going up, and achieving more success. And the billionaires, they focus so much more on what is the overall trend line over years versus how does it feel day to day or week to week. And this ability to actually focus on the trend line is something that not only makes the journey way more likely to succeed, but frankly also helps regulate your emotions, because you're not feeling the up and down of a given day, week, or month of success, but you're saying, are we trending the right direction? And if we trend this right direction, over time you'll get to your goal. Now, we also need to talk about network, because everybody knows network is one of the most powerful influences on your success. And you might know about the law of 5. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And yes, that is one of the things that makes billionaires successful. But there's something else that billionaires do with their network that I actually frankly rarely see people talk about. And maybe this is because it's the complete opposite of what most beginner entrepreneurs do. You see, most beginner entrepreneurs, when they think about doing things, whether it's providing services, selling a product, or helping someone out, it's always this sort of exchange mindset. I will solve a problem for a person and they will pay me. And there's, you talk about creating value and things like that. But at a certain level, you start to understand that getting paid for a service is often the lowest value you can receive in exchange for giving someone value. What billionaires trade for instead of actual money is they trade what's known as social capital. Now, in this world, we all have a certain amount of social capital. As you accumulate more success, either you become wealthier, you build businesses, maybe you're a famous actor or whatever, you start to accumulate social capital. And your social capital sort of based relative on your standing within a certain network. So as you go to different networks, depending on how much they know about you, you will have different social capital. But within these networks, what you do, rather than exchanging, services or things for money, you exchange things for social capital in a very implicit way. It's never stated. Let me give you a really simple example. Let's say a friend of mine is starting a company and wants to get introduced to one of the investors that invested in my company. I have a lot of social capital with the investors that invested in my company because I gave them a really solid return. I made them millions of dollars. So naturally, anyone I introduce them to they're going to be excited for that meeting. They're going to think very highly of that meeting. But on top of that, I can sort of choose to lend or not lend to this person more social capital depending on how I make that intro. So I could say, hey, listen, I met this entrepreneur at this networking event, didn't really get to know them that much, but they wanted to speak with you, so connect to you guys, I'll let you guys take it from here. What I'm doing in that scenario is I'm making the introduction, but I'm reserving my social capital. I'm saying I'm not really vouching for this person. They asked for this intro, so I'm just making it. On the other hand, if I'm really vouching for this person, I say, you know what? I met this entrepreneur at this event. They walked me through the product. It's a game changer. I've never seen anything like it. Oh, and by the way, did I mention the founder is the smartest, hardest working person I've ever met? They hustled so hard to meet me. You guys have to take this meeting. You'd be crazy not to. I think they're the next big thing. I've now lent this person a bunch of my social capital. Now, this can go two ways. If my investors invest in this person and it goes well, they make a bunch of money, then this person that I've lent social capital to, their social capital goes up and I get a bunch back to me because I just made my investors more money. So in this network, I now have more social capital. This person has more social capital. Everybody wins. But if I vouch for this person super hard and their business fails, they are a bad operator, they steal my investors' money or something like that, they don't actually just lose social capital. I lose a ton of social capital too. And I hope that's pretty intuitive. The way billionaires actually play the game of social capital is they're very mindful of how much social capital they're lending to a specific person or a specific circumstance, how it's going to affect the dynamic within that network, and what the other person might do as a result of that social capital. And so it's this constant game of inflow, outflow as you help others. Your social capital within these networks is rising and falling. And to give you an idea of just how powerful this is, when we were raising money for our company Prodigy, we went out and pitched a bunch of investors. One of the earliest investors that ended up actually investing was SV Angel. And at the time, SV Angel was the top seed investor on the planet. It was run by this guy named Ron Conway, legendary investor. They know very well that when SV Angel writes you a check, it's not just a check. At the time, they wrote $200,000 check. It's social capital and social proof from SV Angel because they've selected you. And all of a sudden, we got to experience this where as soon as word spread throughout Silicon Valley that SV Angel had invested in us, everybody wanted to give us money. And we went from literally begging people and getting turned away left and right to we didn't know what to do with how much money we were offered. We ended up actually saying no to about $12 million where we just we couldn't take all that money in. And we were able to raise some investors, celebrities and things like that I never even met. They would just email me and say, hey, I heard SV Angel's in, I heard so-and-so's in, I'd love to join the round. Could I get in for 50 grand, 100 grand? We had like 3 or 4 of these people where I never met them once, but they had big status. I knew who they were. They wanted in, they knew about us, and so we let them in. So social capital is not just like this feel good, you do me a favor, I do you a favor, you scratch my back. It's literally the way billions and trillions of dollars are moved around these networks, sort of through implicit lending out social capital, gaining social capital, and building your own social capital through the results that you generate. And the final thing that I've sort of pulled from meeting all these billionaires and understood what makes them different is 2 very specific mindsets they all have. You see, if you look around your life, basically everything in it is a mix of forces that you can control and circumstances and forces that you can't control. And in general, the more that you believe the forces that you cannot control, either your circumstances, your environment, your parents, whatever, the more you believe those things are actually resulting in the life you live today, that they are controlling the life that you live, generally, I've seen the less successful you will be and the less happy you will be. Billionaires, on the other hand, they understand there's a ton of circumstances, there's a ton of things that are outside of their control, but they still take full 100% responsibility for their environment and their situation as it is in any given moment. If they don't have enough money in the bank, it's not anyone else's fault, it's their fault. It doesn't matter if they got screwed on a business deal, doesn't matter anything. They take ownership of the responsibility. But on top of that, it's not just that they take ownership, they also firmly believe that they can change any circumstance, any situation. And this growth mindset, this belief that you can actually learn and change anything, combined with full ownership of your exact situation, is really what makes people successful. And this is probably one of the reasons that every successful person that I've met at a high level usually has, a CEO coach or an executive coach. They're always trying to learn and level up. Even if their CEO coach is maybe worth way less than them, they value input and coaching in their lives to actually level up every aspect of their game. And in fact, one of the most powerful things you can do if you want to really level yourself up and get to the next level is to start to build a network of multimillionaires or billionaires that you can actually meet with regularly, grab coffee, and get to know. So if you want to actually get to the success you want in life, you need to learn from these billionaires, do what they do, build a mentorship network. Now, on my own journey, I developed a very simple process for meeting and befriending multimillionaires and billionaires and having them actually become my mentors. I released a full video explaining this process step by step. Click the link over here. It'll walk you through everything you need to know. It'll be super helpful.